There are so many variations of the Necromancer minion build out there, but this one right here is by far the best one for level 50 to 100 and beyond. This build excels at absolutely everything. It is incredible for dealing with tons of enemies at once as we pull enemies into one place before annihilating them, and it's an absolute beast in terms of bossing as well. There's no downside to the build. The best thing about this build is that it requires no uniques whatsoever, so it really does reach maximum power effortlessly. In this video, we'll cover how to play this build, the skill tree, Paragon board, and gear and aspects, and tempering. We'll also go over in a bit more detail why we run Kalan's Edict over Shadowblight, and why this version of the build is better than the Shadow Minion version, and why I prefer Blight over Bone Prison. So let's go over the core gameplay loop. Once you've raised your army of the dead, you want to start off by using your main skill Blight. Blight deals damage and then leaves an area which causes further damage over time. The main reason we use Blight is because of Supernatural Blight, which boosts our minions' damage by a whopping 20%. Our second ability, Decrepify, slows enemies and weakens them so they damage you less. With Abhorrent Decrepify, enemies hit while afflicted have a chance to reduce any active cooldowns by 1 second per hit, which is really going to help bring down your Army of the Dead cooldown. Throughout this process, we're going to be creating a ton of corpses, so remember to use the Raise Skeleton ability every 8 seconds so your minions' damage is buffed by a further 30%. We also use Corpse Tendrils to pull in enemies, and this then procs our aspect of Grasping Veins, which increases critical strike chance and boosts critical strike damage. Whenever we're overrun by enemies or we're facing a boss, we then use our ultimate ability, Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead raises volatile skeletons constantly for 7 seconds, which charge in, but more importantly, it activates our Unyielding Commander aspect, which boosts minion damage by 70 to 100%, which is pretty much doubling damage whenever we need it to. Our Golem ability is there to break crowd control as it grants us Unstoppable. We use the key passive Kalan's Edict, which grants us attack speed for each active minion. And because we have 12 minions out, that's going to be a whopping 36% attack speed bonus, which interacts with our Paragon node, Cult Leader, and provides us with even more damage on top. Now there is a Shadow variant of this build which utilizes Shadowblight, whereby every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage, they will take additional shadow damage, but more importantly, it will proc the Shadowblight aspect, whereby after 10 activations, it will boost damage by a whopping 120%. Now, the best way to apply shadow damage quickly and get those 10 activations is through the ultimate Bone Storm and the aspect of Ultimate Shadow. So Bone Storm applies shadow damage. But Bone Storm has a massive 60-second cooldown, and thus it requires good gear with ultimate cooldown reduction and stacking cooldown reduction in general to achieve this. When you're leveling from 50 to 100, you won't have these stats optimized. So for leveling 1 to 100 and for the early end game, until you have better gear, Kalan's Edict is much better. The other question is why Blight over Bone Prison? Bone Prison can apply Blight through the aspect of Plunging Darkness, but Bone Prison again has a cooldown, and again, until you can stack enough cooldown reduction, I found the uptime on Bone Prison really poor, so I actually preferred spamming Blight, and I'll explain how we have near maximum essence nearly all the time a little later. So let's go over the skill tree next. So we want to put 1 point into Bone Splinters and 1 point into Enhanced Bone Splinters. Then you want to put 5 points into Blight and 1 point into Enhanced Blight and 1 point into Supernatural Blight. Put 3 points into Hewed Flesh so we can generate more corpses, and then we can generate corpses whilst damaging bosses as well. Put 1 point into Grim Harvest so we can put 3 points into Fueled by Death. Then we get 3 points into Skeletal Warrior Mastery to boost minion damage. Next, put 1 point into Decrepify, 1 point into Enhanced Decrepify, and 1 point into Abhorrent Decrepify. Put 3 points into Skeletal Mage Mastery for more minion damage, 3 points into Amplify, 3 points into Death's Embrace, and 2 points into Death's Approach. Put 1 point into Corpse Tendrils, 1 into Enhanced and Plagued Corpse Tendrils. Put 3 points into Reaper's Pursuit, 3 into Gloom, and 3 into Terror. Put 1 point into Army of the Dead, and then 1 into Prime and Supreme Army of the Dead. Put 3 points into Golem Mastery for more Golem damage. Then put 3 points into Inspiring Leader to boost our minions' critical strike chance, 3 points into Hellbent Commander to boost minion damage whenever we're near them. And then finally unlock your key passive Kalan's Edict, which is going to massively buff your minions' attack speed. In terms of our Book of the Dead, for our Skeletal Warriors we get the Reaper node, so we generate more corpses. This is actually currently bugged in a good way, and it actually also reduces cooldown, so it's the best one to use by far. For our mage, we use the Shadow Mage to increase damage for each active Shadow Mage out there. And then we use the Blood Golem, so it gets 50% more damage output when healthy, but you can use this node on the left instead when doing more difficult content or hardcore content, as that's a massive 30% damage reduction. But yeah, for damage instead of survivability, use this node instead. Let's move on to gear. So let's start with our aspects. We use the aspect of Hardened Bones for damage reduction, aspect of the Hulking Warlord, so the cooldown for our Golem's attack is reduced, aspect of Reanimation for more minion damage, aspect of Occult Dominion to boost the number of skeletal warriors and mages we have by 2, aspect of the Void on our boots, so our Blight ability pulls enemies in and sort of acts like a mini corpse tendrils. Our two-handed weapon has the aspect of the Frenzied Dead, so our attack speed is increased by up to 90%, which is massive because then it interacts with our Paragon nodes as well. We have aspect of the Grasping Veins on our amulet, which buffs critical strike chance and damage after using corpse tendrils. Aspect of the Umbral on our ring, so whenever we use it, we generate tons of essence. When we use Corpse Tendrils, Blight, or Decrepifiers, they all crowd control enemies. This will single-handedly solve all your essence issues, trust me. We also have aspect of the Unyielding Commander on our second ring for that massive damage boost when using Army of the Dead. In terms of gear rolls, for our helmet, you ideally want cooldown reduction, intelligence, and maximum life. For your chest piece, you want intelligence, maximum life, and Golem Mastery. For your gloves, you want intelligence, critical strike chance, and attack speed. For your legs, intelligence, maximum life, and then armor or skeletal mage mastery. For your boots, you want movement speed, intelligence, and maximum life. For your amulet, you want ranks to Hellbent Commander, cooldown reduction, and critical strike chance. For your rings, you want critical strike chance, intelligence, and critical strike damage. For your weapon, you want to use a two-handed scythe. This is because minion damage scales off the damage per hit value, not DPS. Two-handed scythes have the highest damage per hit value, even better than two-handed sword. Aim for intelligence, maximum life, and critical strike damage or percentage damage here. For tempering, for armor, you want around 100% corpse tendrils size increase, which is around 3 of them rolled for that. And then you want to put Decrepify size on the rest of your gear. You also want to hit the armor cap of around 9,300, so one of your gear should have tempered percentage armor. Otherwise, we want maximum life on everything else. For your boots, you want to temper movement speed along with one of Tendrils or Decrepify, depending on how your other gear is tempered. For your amulet and ring, you want ultimate cooldown reduction and golem damage. Remember to go for golem damage on your gloves as well. The golem is by far the strongest minion, which destroys enemies in one hit, and it scales way more aggressively in the endgame, so stack as much golem damage as possible. On your two-handed scythe, go for minion attack speed and golem damage. For the Paragon board, I'll place a link in the planner for the full level 100 setup, but essentially here's the summary. We put the Glyph of Control on the starter board for more minion damage against crowd-controlled enemies. Our next board, we get the Scent of Death, legendary node, which gives us damage reduction most of the time or increased damage. We then put the Territorial Glyph here as we want the 10% damage reduction. This is the first glyph I actually leveled to rank 15, as otherwise it's difficult to get the 25 dexterity for the bonus 10% DR. Next we get the Bone Graft board, but don't actually get the legendary node. We place the Glyph of Scourge and unlock the bonus 10% extra damage to enemies affected by shadow damage. Next we get the Flesh Eater board, which gives us 40% extra damage after consuming 5 corpses, and here we place the Golem Glyph, which gives us increased golem damage. We then get the Cult Leader node, which synergizes with our attack speed and gives us even more damage. Finally, we get the Corporeal Glyph and unlock the bonus, which gives us more damage and more movement speed per active minion. One thing I haven't mentioned is gems. On your armor, you want rubies for more life. On your weapon, you want 2 sapphires to increase vulnerable damage. And then on your amulets and rings, put on diamonds to increase resistances against all elements. So there you have it, my Blight minion build that destroys the level 50 to 100 leveling process and is amazing for the early to mid end game. If you enjoyed what I talked about today, remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel for more Diablo builds as we get deeper into Season 4. I'm Mr. Ronit, and that's it for today. Peace out, guys.